And are we going to be all set to go?
I'm ready.
Okay.
You're ready.
Okay, it is 2 o'clock and looks like we are ready to go. So I'm going to call this special meeting of the Planning Commission of July 24th, 2020 to order. Mr. Weber, could you please do a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Trunzo?
Here.
Mr. Covington?
Barry,
Mr.
I'm mute.
Hunker?
Sorry, I'm here.
Here. Okay. Mr. Hunker?
Here.
Ms. Matcha?
Present.
Ms. Lucier?
Here.
Mr. Strange?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
And I'm here myself.
We have a full complement of commissioners and therefore a quorum. And do you have the notice of meeting?
The agenda for the Planning Commission special meeting was posted at City Hall and on the city portal on July 17th. That's all I have.
Okay, we have any correspondence? I didn't see any.
No, there was none.
Okay.
Dan,
yeah.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Will we be able to add a new item to the agenda? The message we received from the ordinance committee about trees. Will we do that? Other business, or is that not for today?
Well, I don't think it's for consideration today. I guess.
Okay.
Glenn, can we at least mention that we received it?
Sure, absolutely. You can give a status on items like that. Just there's no substantive discussion about it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have had some discussion about how to approach this from a planning commission standpoint.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you, Jay. Okay, the first matter of business is old business, and that is the discussion regarding the comprehensive development plan with a presentation from Debbie. Welcome back, Debbie. We haven't seen you in a while. And we've been working pretty hard the last few days in particular to put together, along with Debbie, a presentation, and it required some reworking and as a result of taking into consideration the COVID-19 impact on us and some other factors. And I apologize for getting it so late, but there were a lot of factors that played into that, including Debbie had a 4-hour power outage this morning at her office and had to finally send it to us using the Wi-Fi from the Georgetown Library parking lot. Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you to present your presentation, and then we'll go to discussion. And I can also tell all of you that you're going to have some homework involved after this meeting. Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, I'm going to pull this one up. Hope it works. All right. Can everybody see I'm getting to the beginning of the slide?
Yes.
Yes.
So you see the full slide, not my PowerPoint?
Well, no, if we can eliminate your PowerPoint on the left-hand side, I think it would help because
Just go to presentation mode, right?
Yeah, it's partially covered up by the video screens.
So I'm trying to get this one. I've got it over here. All right, let me try this really quick. Sorry.
If you go on the bottom of the presentation, on the right-hand side, the one that looks like a wine goblet, that will take you there too. See that icon?
Yeah, it's
right next to the slide.
3 over from where you are, lower right corner.
Right over here?
All the way down at the bottom, see the little gray little icons? One is kind of filled as a square. Just move over 3.
Looks like right next to the volume button, maybe.
Yeah, next to the volume.
I'm not seeing that because of a toolbar. So let me move this. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out of this one. Let's try this again. Then I'm going to get into this mode.
Yeah, bring your cursor all the way down to the bottom right.
Bottom right.
Yep, see where your volume is? Yep, move it over.
Further.
There you go, right there. Click.
Okay. Thank you. I
Got
don't
it.
know what screen I'm on. Are you seeing a full screen? Because I've got one here, one here, and one here. All right. So as long as we're on the first screen that we need to be on, and it's the wide screen that says the Planning Commission meeting July 24th, goals and next steps. Everybody see that? Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm still seeing your PowerPoint on the left-hand side, but.
So what is going? Let me try this one then. How about that?
No, same.
We just tested this at 120 today. So I'm going to get out of sharing my.
You can hit hide thumbnail, and that eliminates all of us.
All of us.
You can't see us, but you can hear us. If that makes any difference. Up in the upper right-hand corner.
Right here.
The first bar, if you do that, it eliminates our videos.
This one right here.
No, it's up. Well, mine. It's right here.
Yeah, you can just shorten the pane that has the slides.
Actually, if you do side-by-side mode, if you go up to the top to view options, it will help. Just click on view options. We may each have to do that individually though.
Okay, I'm gonna get out of my slide really quick because and go through the way that we did this earlier.
Okay.
I'm gonna get out of everything because we had it set to where it came up and I just think I shared the wrong screen. So let me just see about which screen I'm gonna be sharing. It's gonna be this one. Presentation. Let me get to, sorry about this. I want to get it set to where Max and I tested it this morning and we had no problems. So I want to make sure we get the way you can have from the beginning. Okay, now I'm going to share. So you don't see anything yet, correct?
Correct.
No.
Right, so I'm going to do share screen. Apologize for the delay. We did get on here early today. Max is my witness. How about this one?
There you go.
Love it.
Yep.
Okay, that's what we tested. Thank you, Max. Thanks, everybody.
I still show everyone's picture of mine on the right-hand side.
Yeah, but you can hit the
go up.
That's not me, right? That's gonna be Barry.
Yeah, Barry, in that blocks, there are a couple choices that you can choose. Just the straight dash and that'll minimize while we go through this.
Yeah, Debbie, you're good. And this slide only.
I'm sorry, do what, Rachel?
In the black box where it says talking or you see the pictures, there are a couple dashes.
Right.
Right. Just click the lowest one, which means
I did
we'll
that
minimize.
before. Right. That's what I did before.
Yeah, good. Okay, then you're good.
Are
Okay,
you-
good.
Everybody good?
Yeah, I think so.
We should be on the second slide and everybody should be seeing the 2010 CDP 4 visions.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I met with Jeff and Rick, well, not physically, but we spoke on the phone and we thought where we were losing some things is we actually went through and found where we've talked about goals before, but in hindsight, we kind of actually misstepped that there's 4 new planning commission members. So we want to take you back to what the 2010 vision or comp plan says really quick. There's 4 visions in your 2010 CDP: water resources, town character, community service, neighborhoods, and businesses. And I'm not going to read the slides verbatim because everybody will be able to have it. So this is informational only. And I'm going to go to the next one. So we have 4 visions that was in the 2010 plan. They also had 4 key areas, which was stewardship of natural resources, unique environmental demands, the city's resource and service capacities and the demands placed by residents and visitors, continued residential ambiance, resort attractiveness, and favorable business climate, and then planning for physical and functional change. So these are key areas. And what we're doing is we're going through to make sure they'll stick. Then in the current plan, this was the exercise that not everybody was a part of, and I wanted to let you know we've done. There was 17 goals, and that's laid out in this spreadsheet here. There's actually 17 goals, in only 5 chapters of the document. So usually in an average comprehensive plan, I've had more than 45, and state planning has said it's way too many goals. Is anything going to be met in the next year to 5 years? So you'll see as we go through this exercise, a lot of them can override each other, but I've also had towns that put duplicates in each section. That's not recommended as well either. So you have 17 goals in this last plan. And when we went through that, we actually went through and asked the Planning Commission to say, what other goals initially do you have on the plan? And the ones in red, I'm taking the spreadsheet we just had, and the ones in red actually are ones that were completed and identified in your state plan. So select and fund a wastewater discharge, and then uniform waysigning, oceanfront facilities supporting the ocean. So you'll see once again, I'm just going to go through the goals. I broke them down a little bit better so you can see these are the priority actions underneath those sections. So you have your original goals. Now we get into priority sections of how to implement and what needs to be done for each one. You're going to go ahead in your homework and look through these to say, do they still fit? Because what you want to do is honor the work from the original comp plan to the 2010 to the 2015. If these are still true, then we want to go ahead and keep them. So I don't see any that have been completely completed. And with that, I'd want to do a disclaimer, as Jeff alluded to in our conversations, was you do not get an F for not doing any of these. Some of these take 10 years. Some take 5. Some of these have been done. A lot of them are driven by funding, and a lot of them are long-term goals. When you talk about maintenance, that's forever. So don't feel that we haven't been doing a lot of stuff or the city hasn't been doing a lot of stuff. Here's the ones for this section on the Chapter 7, which is access for people and cars. So instead of have you read the whole section, I want to digest to say, do these still apply? And if so, let's leave them in the plan. So we go through each one of these action items for, once again, each goal. So we had one new action item in the exercise that we did formerly with the Planning Commission was the city will one that was completed, which was the CIP program. And that's a large project that can be done over time that can be used for several things. So that was one that was taken off. So you have 3 items that are taken off, and I think there's more, but we'll just go through these in your homework and find out what are still applicable. So I think that exercise is, if there's anything that needs to be removed, just let us know. I apologize. That's the help desk for our IT issues we had today. All right, so when the Planning Commission reviewed these goals collectively, this is a hard chart to see. I think maybe it'll be easier when you are able to look at it after we send it to you. We had everybody agreed almost 100% to leave a lot of these in here already. So we made some decisions to move forward to say what's still relevant, what should we keep in the plan, and any new ones that we have. So what I want to bring to your attention in this exercise when we talk about goals, if you could please look down at the very bottom, which is going to be this area right in here. I don't know if my cursor goes. The last 2, which is rewrite zoning code, review and consider form-based zoning codes. That isn't a goal. That's a priority action item. And what we want to do is get the goals from you so we can go ahead and—
Is that a priority item from the old plan or the new plan?
In where it says add to the far right column was 3 items where the planning commissioners wanted to add new goals in this initial concept. So those were not in the current plan. It says add to the right.
Oh, I see it. Okay, right.
Yeah, so that 3rd column is the ones where it says add, revise, add. So we have 3 new ones and several others that need some work in the language that we're working on now. So the goals do not get very specific to say rewrite zoning code, use form-based code. That is not a goal. I'm going to show you what we have for a goal that we wrote in there as far as some of the code and regulations. If you say it's form-based code, then you have to follow through and do the form-based code. We're not sure if that's the option that everybody wants to do that's involved. So I'm going to move forward to show you what we've been working on. And when people say we haven't been working on, not working on anything, but haven't been present, we have over 200 hours of writing. And we've been writing and collecting data. And since this project is now 2 years out from its starting point, we have new documents. The state strategies for 2020 just got adopted. The county comprehensive plan, we have new components. There's a new housing analysis that just came out from the state. There's the climate and energy survey and workshop activity that's taken place. So now we have to redo some of those chapters. This is our draft layout for our format for our plan, and it includes 13 chapters, several different items right now. And once again, this is our draft because more things come in and we're adding more things as we write, reorganizing, pulling our chapters together. We follow the format that state planning has with their checklist. So this is the format that is a product of KCI. The state agencies really like the formatting where they can go through chapter by chapter with requirements. So this is the format we're working on now for the table of contents, and you'll see we'll have more things added as we go through, or I would say probably condensed together as well. Like when we say certain ones, for example, climate change, that's a pretty big section because it involves several different components of climate change. So then when we get to the goal section, this is where we have the homework. So out of the table of contents, we really have chapters 5 through maybe it's 12, if I recollect, where we need to look for goals. So we took the other goals you had and put them in here already and pre-populated them. And then we added some in general discussion that I've heard you say in the meetings, because we haven't collectively come up with goals, but generally we've had some. So one of the goals you already have is to protect historic and characteristic structures. One of the ones you've talked about is increase awareness with new housing developments located in neighboring municipalities and Sussex County around the city. Mixed use development is another one that you've talked about with housing. And then support and encourage a variety of housing stock for all income levels. The state is going to require you to have some kind of goal or strategy regarding workforce housing, affordable housing, and or a combination of housing stock or income levels. So that one will pass the snifter test on affordable housing, the goal of it. How it gets there is a whole nother avenue. How we meet that goal, how we can work towards that goal is then going to be an implementation recommendation item, not a goal. So do you see how they're a little higher level? And some, we've been talking a lot about implementation and items, but these goals are higher level. So in the homework we're going to ask you as we go through a couple more is, you do not have to come up with the full sentence lengths of it. You do not have to come up with how you're going to word the sentence. Like mixed use development, we're going to work on the wording of that and present it back to you in a draft.
And Debbie, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
As it relates to this needing, of course, to be in this document, does this goal or does this effort need to also then be accomplished within the 1 mile square of downtown Rehoboth, or just Rehoboth as it relates to the zip code of Rehoboth? How does that work?
The town limits. Your jurisdiction legally is the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you're talking about housing, we know that housing within Sussex County and neighboring municipalities, depending on the volume of it, which is large with multifamily, could have a negative or positive effect. So we covered the, housing developments near or around the municipalities. The other one is intergovernmental coordination, which you're going to see, we're going to have further down the road. If the county has something, the city of Rehoboth should be able to say, we want to know if you're within so many miles or so long. Could you inform us and let us be a part of it, or at least see it? And it usually comes to the staff for input. So this is specifically to the city limits where your regulations and your laws would apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, good question.
Debbie, are any of these out now, or are we going to be seeing those, like the chapter headings and the subheadings? Is that what we're going to be working with, or are we working with something you've already written?
So this, like, for example, this one exercise in housing, we put in the one goal. They only had one goal for housing in the last plan. So we pulled that goal over for you because that's considered in there. And the 3 I've heard you talk about. So I put in the 3 that I know I've heard at meetings. So you would stick to anything relating into housing that you feel would be a goal. And this might be a difficult level if people aren't used to writing goals and and recommendations. If you put a recommendation in there, we'll definitely make sure it's in the recommendation part, but this step is the goals right now. But it is by, Joyce, good point, or Commissioner, it is by these table of contents. So now we're honing in on topics.
Okay.
So it gets to be a little easier by topic.
Okay, thank you.
And those subcategories you can be able to see. The other disclaimer I want to give is this is still initial from the Planning Commission. You've had the surveys, you've completed the community organization interviews, and now this is a very initial step of goals because you haven't seen all the data and all the information behind it. So we do feel the goals are going to change. Once you get your first draft document, you're going to have an opportunity to go through that, to go through the information to say, well, because I read the statistic or because of the county's doing this or the state's doing this, I might want to add this goal or change this goal. But we want to be able to work on these with this initial draft to move forward. And I think everybody will have them so far based on all the research, all the information you've talked about, your interviews, your surveys, etc. It'll be a good place for us to start and then see how many we overlay.
Good.
So the next one's economic development. So the top two were in your document already. So when you have this PowerPoint, you can go back to that spreadsheet and see they're already in there. The third one is increase economic redevelopment collaboration among private and public partnerships throughout the city to provide a variety of commercial and service establishments. So this one goal could have so many things attached to it. It could have P3 money. It could have incentive money. It could have your facade grants. There's so much that can be put under the implementation action items on this, but that's a hierarchy goal. Support outdoor dining businesses. I just pulled this because of COVID is becoming more of a trend. And I feel that the city of Rehoboth is changing probably the paradigm that used to be out there with you couldn't have alcohol unless you were a restaurant. You couldn't have outdoor entertainment. You couldn't have outdoor seating. A lot of that is kind of shifting in Rehoboth to allow more. So we probably want to look at support outdoor dining businesses, and you might even want to say entertainment. I just threw that out there because we're going to see outdoor dining staying a lot longer, and maybe it's a thing of a permanent trend now that people are wanting more of. And in redevelopment, that's going to be very interesting in Rehoboth because a lot of the properties are wall to wall. So if you think of anything with economic development there, for example, another one that we have in our back pocket would be to support organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce, the Main Street, and even if we didn't spell them out, it would be support economic development within the county and municipal and neighboring city and neighboring municipalities as far as economic development organizations. That way we don't leave anybody out because everybody's very important. And then we get to, it's the same thing. So you only have a couple more. Transportation, you'll see that we pulled over a couple of, these are the ones that are in there now. And they're very high level goals that can be further broken down. So I think that's what we want to get through. These were in your plan already. I think they're fairly still applicable always. And then we will provide a document response on the emergency response plan because the county has one that the city actually endorses. So it's the same exercise. I don't want to bore you with all the reading. It's the same thing with utilities, where we've talked about relocate overhead utilities to underground. Where did that one drop off? Just continue to encourage and support utilities. I'm sorry, I apologize for this one. Support ongoing maintenance of city assets to ensure life expectancy and longevity. If the city staff does not have the funding or the manpower or the resource to be able to maintain the assets, you're going to be looking at large capital costs as well. Continue to provide reliable services. These are all new because we didn't have anything in utilities other than the wastewater outfall you'll see. The other one is increase technology infrastructure. I've heard you guys talk about the need for Wi-Fi, the need for fiber, technology infrastructure to support smart city initiatives and provide reliable services needed for sustainability and growth. This actual goals, I feel, will have a lot more with the utility section with having input from the Public Works Director as well. So you'll see the higher kind of, it gets you to think about one, sleep on it, go to another one. I envision this to be a pretty large goal chapter. However, a lot of them fall under. So the first three were in your existing document. And we keep talking about ocean, bay, lake, canal, and preservation of them. So I feel that we're going to be combining some of these, because controlling the scale and the use of structures, maintaining the visual access, I think those can all be items that we want to put in your design standards as you're dealing with the hotel and others. But I did put in, we've talked a lot about moving towards environmental friendly initiatives. So I put encourage and support environmental best management practice initiatives with an incentive program. So this can take its own initiative plan to be very, very long. That covers from trees to recycling to greenhouse gases. There's several things that would fall into lead support for buildings and structures. That falls into several different things. So is this helping get your thought process a little bit more on the goals for each one by topic and funneling it a little better?
Yes.
Okay. And then we've got open space and recreation.
Debbie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this may be more for Rick. Are we going to develop this and then go to the public and ask for their input? Or are we going to ask for the public's input and then coordinate with that and then develop these goals and implementation plans? For example, I know like the SOLA, they wanted to do a presentation, which of course we couldn't do because of COVID, but they also perhaps want to do a presentation through televideo to us with their concerns and what have you.
Can I ask you, Commissioner Covington, to just hold that thought, because we do have that included in this presentation?
Okay.
I'm almost to the exercise part, but we did consider that, and we do have a presentation specifically addressing your need on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Here's open space. It's the same exercise. Historical and culture resources as well. And then we get into the land use. So you'll see their hierarching goals, which means the implementation will be a lot more detailed. And here's the land use section. So we put, one of the recommendations we have was review and update city code regulations by identifying areas of conflict. Everybody has brought that up, the conflict regulations, the staff and the planning commission and the commissioners. Clarifications on the code. So to be very clear and update the definitions. And then introducing new regulations in support of the CEDP recommendations. We do not know what those are yet. You won't know what code recommendations you have yet. That is an implementation task that'll take a project all on its own to go through. Then we put identify and promote adaptive redevelopment and underutilized areas for vibrant community while preserving the character. So feel free to add to this. There is no wrong answer. We're going to take your input, collect it together, and try to simplify the number of goals we have and to make sure we're meeting all the initial intents. So with that, you know how we like our homework. What we're going to ask is...
Joyce has a question.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
Can I just ask you a question, Debbie, before you go on? This goes back to Rachel's question. Under travel or transportation, you have air transportation. Well, as far as I know, we don't have a whole lot of it within the city limits. So how much are you how much do you want us to put in? I don't know what you mean by air transportation.
So in the table of contents, we have to talk about all levels of transportation. So there's a paragraph that we have in there to say your closest airport is Salisbury.
Oh, okay. So that's what
yeah. So basically, if somebody's reading your plan, they'll be able to say where is the closest mode of transportation for that type of service.
All right. So that deals with Rachel's question. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we bring it in. Okay.
So we identify it with just informational purposes only, but unless you want an airport, and we talk about the Sussex County Airport expanding. So unless you want an airport, it's informational section that's required by the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Okay. So we go to the homework, and the best recommendation I would have is look at these topics, see if you want to reword those or have other bullets. And it's just a Word document. So we're going to give it to everybody in a Word format. So you can put your name in, and then it just shows those chapters, and you can put bullets and define your goals. We're not requesting you to do full sentences, because Joyce might have a really good bullet over here, and Steve and Barry might have one over here on the same topic, and we'll combine them into a sentence to make sure we're hitting the same goal. So we'll work on the final descriptions for you for consideration. And then we would like you to be able to email me and then CC Jeff and Rick. And we're asking that for this to be done in the next 2 weeks. So you can take a topic at a time and kind of sleep on it and then come through.
Debbie, can you send us a hard copy of this? Because I'm not sure I'll be able to do on a Word document. I don't have a computer to do that. I just have an iPad. So
if you can give it to me in a format that I can cut and paste it, that's what we're trying to get. So if there's a format, like, I mean, I can take a PDF and open it up, but that's why we do Microsoft products, because then your documents.
Well, I maybe haven't done it before, so.
Hey, Steve, Steve, this is Jeff. How about if I work with you on that? We'll overcome that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
okay.
So we will be emailing you this when we get off the phone. I'll email you the presentation, because then you can look at each chapter when you decide to do it. I'll email you the Word document and CC Jeff and Rick, so you'll have everything right there to just respond. Any questions on the goals right now? This isn't the last time you'll see this, and I want to talk next about how we're incorporating other people into the document.
Okay. Debbie, I do have a question, and maybe it's later in this deck. But you mentioned at the outset that the county had submitted their CDP and another organization.
So the state has several documents underway. There's another housing analysis that came out. There is state strategies came out for 2020. So we already finished that section with the last state strategies. We're updating that now.
Can you just send us those links of those new docs so that we could look at them as well?
Absolutely. And are all of you planning, local planning chapter members of Delaware APA? Because you get an email of all the documents, or the governor's website, or releases from DENREC. When you get those emails, they will tell you about all these new studies. But
yeah, I'm not a member of those to get them regularly, but I've been on those sites. So if there's an opt-in, I'm happy to go do it. Maybe the other folks already are, but I am not.
Yeah, you'll have a lot of them like we get them. It's fun. But I'll send you the ones that we have that have been updated. Yep, no problem.
Send us those organizations. I'm happy to go on and opt in.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's talk about the project scope. I've been hearing comments, concerns, and Jeff, Rick, and I have been in touch with this. So I think it's time we provide everybody, including the public, all 3 people that attended today, that I would like to be able to go over the project. So the project scope is 4 phases. As you've seen this slide several times, but I thought I would educate everybody a little bit more on where we're at. There was I apologize to the Planning Commission members that have been here for a while, because you're going to see 1 or 2 slides the same as you've seen them. But I think it's best to get everybody on the same page. We had a 2003 plan that was adopted and certified in right around 2004. A 2010 plan that was adopted in July. And then there was an update report in 2015 of the status of the document. So what I want to relay once again is 2010 had components of it in 2015 that were updated in a report, but the plan itself never got changed. So we're going with the report and the plan and merging it in with our new stuff. So the plan was never modified from 2010 to include anything in 15. So we're going through we've finished going and analyzing both of those documents. But I do want to let you know what happened in 2015. So you're very familiar with the 2010. I have an error on that slide. 2010 CDP. They started the process, and this is according to the Planning Commission Chair's update report in writing. They started the process on May 14th of 2007. They received a grant for the funding. When I say that, that's a really big deal for plans, because that tends to have the municipalities pay more when they get a grant than what it takes to just do the job. They had 9-day-long public workshops, and there was 63 people that attended those 9-day public workshops. That's total. So if they skipped one or attended, they had a 5-month public review and comment period. They had written comments and suggestions, but only between 150 and 140. We have some other jurisdictions where we received a lot more, a lot less. They contacted all the Rehoboth organizations. So have you. They had 2 public information sessions, one in May, one in June. They had a Saturday public hearing where they had an outside facilitator conduct the public hearing, and 41 people attended that. They gave the final draft to the commission September 2009. However, the Planning Commission didn't adopt it till April 2010. And then the council, the city commissioners, didn't adopt it till July. So what happened according to the minutes and the report that we got was there was some more changes that came between the commission and the council. We're trying to get as many changes as possible at the Planning Commission level. So at the council level, city commissioner level, we can say we've taken our time and heard from everybody. That was a 38.5-month process from the beginning to the end. I think that's very valuable information when people are asking you what you're doing on the plan versus what was done before. Because the next slide is where we're at today. We had our contract August 2nd of 2018. There was not a lot of fall work done on this as we had a planning commission chair that was absent. We had survey rescheduling, but the original due date was July 23rd of 2020. And we have one extension to take us to July 31st of 2021. The state is authorized to extend this plan another 6 months till July 2021. However, we have to let them know in October. So I can tell you that over half of the plans that are in the mix right now are on their second extension because they literally are losing anywhere from 4 to 6 months on COVID, pandemic, and having to reorganize how they're going to do their public outreach. There's several of the municipalities are to the point where they're at the public hearing process and they're unsure of how to get this information out, how to get people to do written comments. So it's changing that a little bit that you'll see us do. But we're currently at 24 months. So in that 24 months, which is where we're at, we have had a planning commission significant change over half of our board, 4 new members and new leadership. We did a complete reset less than a year ago, October 2019. We've had 6 scope and task changes, 2 budget changes, schedule changes, and probably another big one that we wanted to talk about is COVID. So I can clearly 100% let everybody know that we canceled the organized community expos because of the pandemic. We were not allowed to have those. So that required us revisiting our phases 3 and 4. So we had to rework our approach and figure out how we're going to do this. Can we still make it within the time? And that's still unknown. We do not know if 2 people are going to show up as today's call or 150. We don't know because now this is turning into a written comment forum versus a public hearing in person. It does change the dynamics. So what's been completed, this is where I want to give you some kudos and us a little bit of support. What's been completed is we went to the state already with your old plan. And for those that haven't been on the Planning Commission, we went there and we got comments on that plan of what they want to see changed. We did a city data questionnaire. All the board commissioners and staff did a SWOT. We did the goals, the action items, collected all that general data that you've seen on that long spreadsheet or that long sheet that we gave you. And we've updated that with new information, as we just alluded to. And then the mixed use development community, you had a workshop on that. You had a sea level rise community workshop. We had a census data analysis and presentation meeting. All the maps were created that were new. We've had intergovernmental coordination on all topics from the county to the state to the local town levels, your neighboring towns. You held a community survey, a visitor survey, a business survey. We had a survey result presentation, and you interviewed several organizations within the municipality. So in the city, every organization that was identified was contacted and interviewed if the person responded, which you had an overwhelming response. You're very, I would say, very tenacious in getting the information and making sure that they were part of the CDP. So we've contacted all the organizations. You've interviewed all the organizations. And we asked them those specific questions in the questionnaire to make sure they were a part of this. However, we're still hearing and getting some recommendations that certain organizations want to come in front of the Planning Commission. So how we have reworked this is, since everybody had an opportunity with the survey. We have done interviews in organizations. I think that it's important that in speaking with Jeff and Rick and Sharon and the mayor, the community organization and city committee input. So we've interviewed all of them. We are going to ask, Joyce, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
I do when you're finished.
Okay. So we are going to ask for additional opportunity for the CDP consideration and inclusion, which means there would be email or contact or phone call to all of those organizations to say, we invite you to come to a public meeting and we'd like you to present information specific to their cause and include their initiatives. These are the same questions you asked, by the way, but their initiatives completed since 2010, the items they have currently underway, and the initiatives they will have proposed, what their vision and goals are, because they could align with some of ours or partner with some of theirs. And what specific recommendations would they have for us to include in the draft document versus the tail end of the document? So we could do the invitations for August when we looked at the schedule. They have an option of a planning commission meeting presentation where they would come in, depending on how many responses you get. Then I would think that Rick could take the time allotted and say if we get 5, they each get so much time, or they could provide a written document. So these are things we've already asked for in the organizational interview, but we feel that rather than have a draft document and invite people that still might want to present and then have another draft document and then include their information and do a third draft document before it's really released for public input is a lot of draft versions out there. So we'd rather have this up front, and this would be everybody. So rather than the planning commission or myself say, we just need to hear from SOLA or we just need to hear from Main Street and we forget about everybody else, we think we need to open it up to all the city committees and all the community organizations and see who responds. Questions on this new approach based on the pandemic and prior to the draft?
How and when are you doing it?
Pardon me?
How and when are you going to do that?
We said August, and they are to respond back to the planning commission chair if they're interested, and they will have 2 meetings, potentially 2.5, depending on what's the agenda in August. Joyce.
Debbie, for several years, there's been an attempt, it's come up at the Planning Commission to incorporate and work with other towns. And I see here you say, I was very happy to see that you have worked with the other towns. Can we get the information of what those topics were? And I presume that was Lewis and Bethany, Dewey, et cetera, or was it inland, or what we wanted was more interaction and collusion with the coastal towns. So I'm asking you, did you deal with coastal towns or inland, or what was the outcome? That's very exciting news.
So what we do is City of Lewis is ahead of you, Henlope and Acres, and Dewey as far as their updates. We have their updated comprehensive plans. So the first thing we do is look at the mapping part of it. So that's working with the town manager, Scott Koenig, Anne Marie Townsend from Lewis. You have Henlope and Acres we've worked with, and then the county is your outline. So
were there any things where they wanted to work together? Was that the point of it, or you were just seeing what they were doing?
No, so every comprehensive plan says intergovernmental coordination on municipal level, county level, and state. So that depends on the topic. It could be a trolley, it could be transportation, it could be open space sharing, it could be annexation of land. So we took all of their comprehensive plans and the county and overlaid and looked at areas that come in and then had initial conversations with the town managers. But what I can tell you also is one of the requirements for this comprehensive plan is we must send it to the neighboring municipalities and they have a chance to come in or to comment on it. That, I think it's a great approach. I can tell you, I've never received comments from a neighboring municipality in my entire career. That's the shame part of it. So I'm hoping that somebody will take the time to read it and review it. The county is part of the state agency plus review system. So they're incorporated in that. But when we get the draft that's released to the public, we send it in your scope. We're sending it to Dewey Beach, to Lewis, to Henlope and Acres. I think those are the 3 that were identified as immediate area.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners at this point? Yeah, this is designed to really provide an opportunity for the organizations who have expressed interest, and maybe some who haven't, who would now desire to take advantage of this opportunity to provide in-person, virtual presentations to us for our consideration before we finalize the initial draft for internal review. And we felt that August was a good time frame because it is when a lot of people tend to be here. Although obviously COVID-19 impacts everyone's decisions about how much time they may or may not spend in any one particular location. But it would seem to be an opportunity also to get some more community involvement during those public presentation sessions. Jeff, did you have anything to add? Or
I would add that the bumping into people and talking, communication, the sharing of information that is so valuable is really impossible at this stage. And I totally understand why people are asking questions and aren't totally comfortable. And I hope this phasing approach and how we've approached it over what will happen over the next 6 weeks or so, and not affect the CDP timeline, it gets people focused on providing information. And I'll go as far as to say, even if people present, we really should have the written information as well, because there's very little face-to-face going on. There's none going on. So the written word is really, really important for all of us to do our jobs efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, as just to follow on with what Jeff said, as you'll see, written comments are going to be a crucial part of this year's work on the CDP. We just don't have the luxury of in-person meetings. That's
our next slide.
way out. Yeah, and so we've also had to readjust this phase, and we want to emphasize the importance of everyone, once this is released to the draft is released to the public for public comment, that they take the time to submit written comments to us, and all of them will be taken into consideration. And I'll let Debbie go on here and how that's all going to be done.
Thank you. So I think what I want to do is get through. So we felt that it was the time to be able to have the organizations come in. And the disclaimer again I want is everybody had the opportunity already. So since we couldn't have the expos and we couldn't have that face-to-face time and conversations, we feel that this would be this puts us back to data collection versus public workshops. We're still collecting data, but you could have, somebody like SOLA or Main Street could have some great objectives and goals and statistics that we need to think about, and we need a partnership with, or think and put in the document, or refer to partnering with them. So this is our educational portion we didn't get really from the Expo. So then we go to the next step, and this is the next step is we release the CDP plan draft. After we get their information, and we make sure we include, I go through it and I include to say, great, we already had that, or this is a really new topic to put in. I'll incorporate that into the draft. This will be an internal document. You will be getting an email directly from me to each commissioner for an internal review of a document, just like internal reviews with personnel committees, internal reviews with budgets, internal reviews with regulations. We want the Planning Commission to be able to see this and have comments individually emailed back in a format that's prescribed in writing, so we can go ahead and make those changes and determine if we have to have the need for additional collaboration on some of the items. So you would have a chance to go through the document before it hits the street and before it opens to the public, where we can readjust to say, do we feel the need for additional collaboration, or do we feel the need to submit this out for the public release? We have sought legal counsel on this, as I always do in my projects. And as long as I'm emailing directly to the Planning Commission member one-on-one, and I'm getting emails back, All of your comments will be put into a spreadsheet and they will all be shared amongst the Planning Commission. But I just usually take the names away because that way we can make sure we do everybody's comments. So you'll be turning that homework directly back into me and we'll be making the adjustments as needed. What helps when we give you these instructions are, and we've tested this recently on the last 2 municipalities because we haven't had an opportunity to have workshops to go through a chapter at a time. That's what you kind of get robbed with the pandemic a little bit, is having a workshop to talk, here's housing, here's what we're going to discuss, here's how we're going to go through it, and here's a poster I'd like to submit, here's an exhibit I'd like to show. So this initial documentation of having you redline it before it hits the municipality or before it hits the public and the city commissioners, and we would come back then after the comments, I would meet with Rick and Jeff to say, okay, we have all of these comments. Do we have comments that would warrant the additional need for several different items? Or do we feel like we've hit this document? We feel comfortable enough, all of us collectively, to represent it to the public. That would be our next step after these August meetings, would be the release of this document. After we feel comfortable at a planning commission level with our internal document and with city staff input, we then have the draft plan presentation. So this is to the city commissioners and the community. So we'd go over the project overview. So some of the slides you've seen in here, we're going to take and put in some of the other ones. What's the overview of the project? What have you done? Because when you take this as a presentation, a lot of the general public doesn't know what goes into this or what you've done so far unless they've felt that they wanted to stay active in all these meetings. What's the plan highlights? What's different this time than the last plan? What's really, really different? What can we highlight in this? And then we're going to be going into how we're using the website for the CDP as a portal. We're going to go through a demonstration at this meeting of how to get the information, how to go onto the website, where it is, how you get all the information, and then how to do the written comment process. So right now we're in the development stage with the city staff of written comment process. We'd like them to be able to fill out this prescribed form, pull it off the website, and email it directly to this. We're going to have an email for the city, but that would come to KCI. So we would then have all these collected comments as well. The same exercise that you did on your draft is the exercise that we'd be asking for from the public. And we did not put in the time frame of this of how long the review needs to be yet, because as I alluded to, we can't put dates to all of this yet because this determine the need for additional collaboration is a milestone. The milestone is, does the Planning Commission feel comfortable or do we need more time? And then we can progress to the next step. This milestone is it going to be the holidays? Are we in November? Are we in December? How does the state fall? How's the holidays? So we then come up with a defined schedule. Once it's released to the public, you would have to have a defined schedule so they know when they have to have their information turned in. And then this, Joyce, is where you were talking about. We would also send this draft to the county and the neighboring municipalities to ask for input. So you'd have that before it even goes to the state. So at this point, we're saying, let's do a presentation to the commissioners and get their input. Let's do a presentation for the community's input, the neighboring municipalities, and let's collect what we're going to call the comments outside of the Planning Commission and collect all of them as well. And this tool that we have for this is great because you'll see a spreadsheet again, and the format that you use is what page, what paragraph, what was the comment, and then the next part of the spreadsheet is what our recommendation is. So when I go through that with you, I think you'll like that process. This is what we're developing. I kind of got a little ahead of it. We want that to give them ample time to review and respond. This isn't a document that we would put out for the public and say you have a week or two. This needs to be time where we look and say, okay, how long do we think this needs to be? It can be extended. We can see what we get in the first week. So we'll be monitoring how many responses we get. And we can provide you information on a weekly or monthly basis, hopefully weekly, to be able to say we got 5 comments. We have 2 comments. We have 150 comments. So you'll see. During this process with the municipality, in talking to Chris, your public information officer, we've decided to do an entire press release, just like you did with the surveys, just like we did with all the Expo outreach, is to get this written comment information out with that same type of protocol that we use for the success of your surveys and that what we laid up for the expos. So there will be a whole campaign on trying to get written comments back from people. We will then, once again, I said, analyze those. We'll bring those back to the Planning Commission collectively. That may be a couple meetings. That may be more than one, where we go through and say, you misspelled this word, or this school changed from this name to this name. Those are pretty easy. But when we get into land use items or specific code regulations, a lot of people come in and say, change the width of the parking spaces. And you say, so noted. That's not a comprehensive plan item. That's a policy item. So we take that into consideration when we write the code. So we'd update the plan after those changes, after you say what you agree, disagree, or want us to work on more, or what you want us to change. And that's been tested really good with the pandemic with 2 other towns. We can give you references on Newcastle. They really liked that as far as making sure everybody's voice was heard, everybody's comment was cataloged in, and there was a response for every single person's comment and what action was taken. We went so far as to they're actually going to keep it in their comprehensive plan as an exhibit in the appendix, because it's very difficult to do without having physical public hearings. So they felt the need to add that to the back. So during this process, you've had several opportunities to be able to provide that information. When we get all these comments back from the public, here's another milestone part. We need to determine the need for additional collaboration again. So the first milestone is pass through the Planning Commission and staff. Second milestone is, do we feel the public has comfort level in this, or we need more collaboration on specific topics? So these are 2 milestones that we all understand could change the schedule, the scope, everything, which is why we have that second extension if we need it in our back pocket. Right now, we're on schedule to not need that. But there could be pivotal moments here where we might need more information out there. The next step after we do this with the public comment, depending on, once again, the need for additional collaboration, is the state process. So after we get those changes done from the Planning Commission, from the community organizations, we then have this draft that's a better draft. It's the best that we feel we're going to get with everybody's comments. It then gets submitted to the state. And the state has 24 agencies that look at the document. All state agencies look at the document, including the county. This is the time when the state gets involved. They do not want to see it until you got it better wrapped in a bow. They meet for a brief discussion. The meetings are less than 15 minutes. For us to just go in there, we make a quick presentation. They bring up a couple high-level items, and then they have 30 days to get comments back to us. After we get the comments back, we would then bring those back to the Planning Commission to say, here's all the comments from the state now we have to consider. And what level of things are we going to agree with, disagree with, move forward, any certification issues. There's a lot of recommendations that come out. Once we present them to you in that same spreadsheet format, you would then say what changes you want to make based on our recommendation. If you need more information, we would update the plan and we'd resubmit. The comments are required by law. We have to address every comment. We resubmit the plan to the state to receive the approval letter. The approval letter says, we do not see any certification issues. Thank you for your updates. At this time, we bless you to move forward with the adoption process. That process right there takes usually a minimum of 90 days. Just to kind of let you know that review. After the 90 days, during this time frame, we have an introduction of the plan, which we feel would happen before the state. Then the city commissioners have to set a resolution for the public hearing. And we hold the public hearing. So what we're trying to do is, in this process with this new virtual pandemic approach, we're trying to get all the public comments taken care of way ahead of time and considered in our plan. So a lot doesn't take place in this 12th hour of the public hearing. It still can. You can't control the people of when they're going to come out, what they're going to say, when they want to make political statements or when they want to make land use statements. But we're giving several opportunities for this to take place and consider before we get to this level. I would say probably 90% of the time we're not getting public hearing comments because we've addressed those already on the front load side. But if we get those, this could be another milestone where we might have to make modifications as well. Once it goes to the public hearing, then we ask for adoption of the CD plan, and it's contingent upon the governor's certification. So that vote takes place by state law with the state recommendation is the governor will not sign certification unless you have actually adopted your plan. Once you adopt your plan contingent upon the certification, you get the letter and it's backdated to that adoption date. When you get that letter, it is law. From the time you adopt it, when he says it's the adoption date, or he or she or the governor, it is law. And that point moving forward is when everything changes in your old plan, your maps and everything to the new plan. So I wanted to just give you the backside of the city approval in the state because we know that that's coming in phase 4. And so basically what our next steps are is organization and committee presentations. We're looking at the end of August, and I think Rick will get that in a little bit later on our calendar schedule. Release the draft internally. We're looking at early September because I need to get the committee information plopped in there within like a week after that. And then we'd like to receive your internal comments by the end of September and give you some time to be able to review this, sleep on it, get up again, review it again. And then we're looking at the revisions happening in September and October. Depending on how many we get, we could technically try to finish that the end of September and be raring to go in October for the presentation. But I do want to work with Rick and Jeff on proofreading the presentation and everything. Then when we talk about that phase 4, we're looking at our presentation and release to happen in October or November. And then the public comment period starts. That's as far as we could get in the schedule because of our milestones. So what I didn't want to do was relay to anybody in the public or the commissioners to say, we're going to be done with this in January, hard, fast deadline. Well, we have those milestones to go through. Those milestones meaning your input, the community organization input, the public input, the state. Every one of those milestone moments could shift things. So I hope that gives you a better, hope that gives you a better, sorry, I have FedEx delivery. I hope that gives you a better feeling of where we're at, where we're going, and how we really had to reset and how we now have to do the unique approach of doing a written comments campaign. And that's really where we're going to need your help and rely on Chris and the staff and everybody else to be able to come and say, we really need comments. That's the part that's going to matter the most. The questions and comments and concerns, or Rick, I'll turn back over to Rick actually.
All right, thank you, Debbie. First with the commissioners, are there any questions or comments that any of the commissioners have in response to Debbie's presentation? Yes, Rachel?
I guess it might be just more of a comment, but it really is a question. So I realize we have this extension and we have a lot of work here to do to obviously get to that extension deadline. And there is an option for another extension, but it feels to me after reviewing all of this in looking at where we are right today with COVID, this pandemic that we have to obviously sort through as well. It feels to me that the longer we wait to actually complete this document, the more rework we may actually have to also do. So not that I'm trying to be rigid on the timing here, but don't you think it makes sense to try and work towards this current due date that we have versus potentially having 6 months with a lot of rework to do behind it?
I'd like to respond to Rachel's comment. Yes, that's correct. You heard Debbie talk a little bit about various scenarios we had talked about where we would have draft version 1, 1.5, 1.7, 1.2. We want to be very focused about what input we want, when we want it, and how it will reduce the number of drafts. So there just is not a lot of misinformation and old drafts circulating. Thank you for that comment.
That was a great comment, Rachel, because we're redoing some things right now.
Well, I've heard you say that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be, 7 to 10 times by the time we're through
The
this.
good news is you rarely get new stuff November, December, January. So I look at that as that's when we got to cut it off. So that was great.
Yeah, as we were readjusting this, recently and working with Debbie, both Jeff, Debbie, and I realized that we needed to do something to incorporate, public comment and organizational comment as early on in the process before the dissemination of drafts of the plan. And so we were looking for the most expeditious, most efficient way of doing that. And that's what you saw and heard in Debbie's presentation today. It was what we came up with in response to the limitations we're working under, and COVID-19 and virtual meetings has certainly, forced us to rethink and change our approach. And again, to emphasize the importance and reliance that we have to place on written comments from the public. To just follow up quickly, why don't I do this? Are there any other commissioner comments?
Well, I'd like someone to just go over the homework again and the timeline for it.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my question too.
What, do you want me to do that here, or would you prefer me to email you with the bullets from what we presented?
I don't need the bullets. I just need you to sort of orally tell us what you're saying, when we need to get it back to you, and et cetera. That's all.
You're going to take each topic that I had on the screen for the chapter, and you're going to come up with goals that you feel personally with bullet statements of each one of those topics and email those back by August 3rd. So any that you feel we've missed or you want us to consider.
August 7th, I think.
Or August 7th, I'm sorry.
August 7th, yes.
August
Right,
7th.
You showed us the format for the comments, which we can do either electronically or we can print it out and fill it out. I'll go over that with you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Debbie, while people are taking good notes, I see here, I'm definitely looking forward to your email with my assignment.
Yeah, I would like the email to them.
Yes.
I will not know it from here. I will see it. It'll have a date and I will get it to you.
It'll have a priority and it'll say homework first and then what it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That works.
Okay, let's open, if there aren't any other comments right now from the other commissioners, let's open it up for public comment. I think we still have, as far as I know, just 3 individuals. And Susan Gay, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I just unmuted myself, so great. First of all, Debbie, thanks for the very comprehensive presentation. It's very encouraging, and I have to say I'm impressed with the workarounds that you all have been able to do given COVID. I think that it's interesting to see the history of how the workshops and everything were done before, and how you plan to incorporate written comments this time. And I have to say that given the number of written comments that were on the survey, it's encouraging. And for all we know, you're going to get more by having it in writing, even though I realize that process was brought on by the pandemic. Nevertheless, you may actually get more that way than you would have gotten in the workshops based on the history of the live workshops anyway. So I'm pleased to hear that. I just have a couple of logistical questions about it. First of all, on the comment period that you all are doing internally, where you're incorporating comments and suggestions into the plan before the public sees it. My question is basically how that input would be included. And I understand that because of limitations on the public meetings, that you all are corresponding individually, that the planning commissioners are corresponding individually with Debbie and with the chair and the vice chair, which is as it should be. But then I wonder, how do you achieve consensus on the comments that might be made by individual planning commissioners? And at what part of that process is on the record? Would all of the comments made by the planning commission during that process, even if they're not identified by name, that's not the issue. The issue is just if people come up with individual takes on individual aspects, how do you achieve consensus? Do you achieve consensus, and do you make it available to the public?
Do you want me to ask that, Rick, based on the process we've done in other?
Yes. Yeah.
So we've completed this task in 2 other jurisdictions that were just recently from I'd say April timeframe through. And the comments were very specific. For example, it was more local knowledge or the fact that maybe some things on the city's website was outdated. So for example, we would have the Planning Commission chair would write page 22. This park now has 22 acres instead of 5 acres. Okay. So we pull our data from the staff, we pull our data from the websites, and if it's incorrect, that's an opportunity for them to change it. So a comment like that is, if it's factual, validate it's factual, and we just change it.
Yeah.
If there's questions that change things such as policy or direction or goals or very specific, instead of have it, depending on the level, in this specific jurisdiction, we came back and we met with the Planning Commission chair and we sat down and said, here's some recommendations. And we brought back a couple of items to the Planning Commission, but the rest of them, the majority of them weren't changing the goals, the outcome, the incentive or action items at that point. But it's another milestone when we get those, because I'll sift through those to say, these are ones that we feel are clarification or parts to make the document better, but do not change intent, initiatives, or goals. If it's something that needs a consensus, I would sit down with Rick and Jeff and we'd go through that to say, do we need to put this on a meeting agenda and have a discussion on this topic? Not necessarily go through the plan, but a discussion of the topic to have consensus about this idea. That's that milestone that we find out from the Planning Commission comments. So when they come back, the milestone is, do we have to have a meeting to address some of these specific items and go through it? And as far as comments being received by us, we are subject to everything in FOIA. The concern that you have usually is releasing a document on the street where nobody's seen it yet but a consultant. Mm-hmm. And there's a trust factor in there, but there's a local knowledge factor that needs to come in. So we're going to categorize all of these. They do not get put in the document as an appendix because this is the internal rough draft. Yeah. So when it goes to the, so it would be up to the chair, and Glenn might have to chime in. I would assume anybody would be able to get that information because it is through the FOIA calculation. There's nothing for us to hide. So we could have that information, but it's definitely not Joyce has a recommendation and we're not going to consider it. If there's a consensus driven, everybody would have to speak about it.
Okay, that's great. And then the other question is about the written comments from the public. First of all, I'll just point out that please go back and look at the survey. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of written comments on that. And so I hope that those are already taken into consideration so that, people don't have to repeat themselves. And on the other hand, I understand when they're reviewing the draft, they'll be writing comments on specific things within the document. So that is a different process. But at any rate, you mentioned that that the
I can go back to your survey, if I can interrupt you about the survey, because I think so. What we did was, do you remember the meeting where we came up and we listed all the surveys on the screen?
Yep.
We literally have those printed on a plotter, poster size plotter, and the staff comes in and we mark it when we include it somewhere. This one, and what chapter did it go in? So we literally go through all those to say, was this included? If it's very, very specific, we didn't get into the specifics of you need to change, specific things by dimension or number, but the things that were of a goal or initiatives or incentives, those are all just being crossed off on this master list that we provided the Planning Commission.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's very good to know. And you mentioned that in one of the other jurisdictions that all of the written comments became an appendix. And I don't know if that will happen here or not, but even if it doesn't, would the written comments of the public be part of the public record?
So yes, I'm speaking as the consultant in my recommendation. As we use this website portal and as we get all of the comments collected back, we do like to release all of the comments because we want people to see that people were heard, their voice mattered, it was in the document. However, we did remove the names from the comments because that is when we felt that there was political motives or personal motives. And as a consultant, I really don't know who's behind what, but I want their voice to be heard. So there will be a comment, hopefully a page number in the comment, just not who it came from. Perfect. And we anticipate that to be popped on the website. People can go through that.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Tom Evans, are you still with us?
Actually, this is Sturgis.
Hi, Sturgis.
Hey, hello there. Tom is on a meeting, a virtual meeting with a graduate student. He had to go do that. This is the first time I've observed this planning commission in action, and so anyway, I just wanted applaud you for all this work. I was a part of the 2010 Planning Commission process, so I know how much goes into this, and I'm also kind of looking to see, how much has changed, and having to do this virtually just seems so cumbersome in so many ways. It was just kind of a logistic thing that came up for me, and that was, you were talking about asking organizations to kind of weigh in with a number of questions. And as I'm a member of the tree committee, Mayor's Advisory Committee on Trees, a lot of the committees have not met for months. And so I'm not trying to borrow trouble, but I'm just sort of wondering about the time frame in terms of committees being able to figure out a good way to get that information back to you. And it may be something that chairs can do without consulting their committees or actually having a meeting, and I'm hoping that that's so. But I'm just looking at the short time frame and hoping that works. And I do think it's a good idea to reach out again and ask the different committees and organizations. So I thank you for that.
Rick, would you mind if I respond on that as well?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the tree committee did participate in an interview with the planning commission member for the organization. That took place between March and May. So there was an interview and there was set questions asked about goals, initiatives, etc. So that we've already received.
Okay.
And we probably don't have any changes since then. But when a committee has an opportunity to present and consideration in a 10-year plan, we wanted to be able to give them an opportunity to say, there probably were some initiatives that you've talked about, but maybe haven't able to really work on or put the rubber where the road meets, in your document. So maybe this is an opportunity to be able to say, we want these things considered. But I can also tell you, as far as the tree committee specifically, we have gone through all of your minutes, all of your ordinance recommendations, everything from the arborist report and everything since it's been active on the city's website.
Thank you.
All of that data, because that portal's been great for information. And when you have transparent government and everything's posted, we're able to collect that information and look at what your initiatives are based on your meeting agendas and your minutes.
Great. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, Sturgis, I'm sure you're aware that the Law and Oversight Committee has put forth draft tree ordinance for consideration by the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners has referred that on to the Planning Commission, among other committees, and for input, as well as they move forward with their consideration. And so, there's even, that most recently as last Friday, that certainly comes into consideration for the CDP as well. And
great.
With respect to the participation of the committees, I know it's been hard for them as well with the pandemic, but I think each committee is going to have to decide how and what further input they are able to provide. We just want to be sure that we give them the opportunity and let each chair of the committee work with their members and decide what to do.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sturgis. I guess that's it for the public. Does anyone else have any questions or comments at this point? I guess seeing none. Thank you, Debbie, for this presentation. And, I hope you all enjoy your homework. And, if you have any questions in the meantime, certainly feel free to contact Debbie or to contact me or Jeff. And we can help you out with any of the questions that you have.
Just get that email soon, okay?
I'm actually have to work tomorrow, so you'll see one come. You'll see the PDF of the presentation today and the worksheet with instructions come from me tomorrow.
And thank you for all you did so far, and also
thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
See what happens when we don't see each other?
Lots happened.
Am I excused, Rick, for a Friday afternoon?
Yes, and it's not even Valentine's Day.
I know. Thanks, everybody. Have a great meeting.
Bye-bye.
You have a good weekend.
Take care.
Bye. Okay, we can move on to the next topic, which is an update on the Belhaven Hotel workshops planning. We have had one conversation, Jeff and I and Dom and Matt Janis have had one conversation with representatives of Belhaven Hotel. And the purpose of that discussion was to work out logistics and to identify agenda topic items that need to be considered and moved on to public workshop forums. And it was a helpful conversation. Dom and Jeff and I made clear at the very outset that the discussion was in no way indicative of us authorizing or approving or agreeing to anything. It was simply a topic discussion, whether or not certain items would be on the agenda for public consideration, matters such as status of FEMA, whether or not it was feasible to pursue these discussions at all at this point in time. I indicated that they needed to decide whether or not, given that it was their dime, it was on their side to decide what they were going to end up presenting. Did they want to do this now with the uncertainty of what FEMA would do? Did they want to work on the basis of assuming that they would get a favorable response from FEMA, or how did they want to handle it? And they chose to move forward in designing, our agenda on the basis of a favorable determination by FEMA, and that's how they wanted to proceed. Although they will certainly have alternative plans in the event that that is not the case. But that drove the further consideration of topic items, what needed to be on the table, what they needed to do to prepare for public workshop meetings. For example, with respect to the issue that arose in our meeting regarding the bar and restaurant, that's something totally out of our control. It was made clear that's something they need to address. They need to go to the ABCC. That's not something that the city has control over. So those types of matters, as we went through topic by topic what was going to be on the agenda, were clearly identified as to their responsibilities in coming back to the Planning Commission with those issues resolved or unresolved. And so we're very close to having what I consider to be an agenda that we can utilize for our initial public workshop to work through details and to listen what they have been able to come up with. And we may need to have one more preliminary logistical telephone conversation with them to finish up the topic items for the agenda. But I would anticipate that very shortly we're going to be in a position where all the parties understand what's on the table and what will form the basis for our public workshop discussions. Jeff, did you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Rick. I'll add one thing just to maybe add a little bit more description of how we approach the discussion. The Papa John family floated a question, and they wanted to know, what's the city's general position about high standards of environmental sustainability? Is there any resistance? Are there any code matters? Are there anything that would stand in the way of them proposing a building that would be sort of a demonstration, high level LEED standard kind of building? And I felt comfortable reassuring them that in the feedback we had already from the CDP, that there's huge public support for all matters environmental. And that if there's any doubt on their end, they should definitely pursue that. There's a public good there that the city would be very welcoming of.
That's a good point, Jeff. Yeah, and I think that the Papa John family is definitely desirous of perhaps making their project, an example for others to follow. And those environmental issues could take many different forms. And so I was happy to hear and hope that others will also pursue those types of environmental strategies for their proposals. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's more of a concern. Maybe this is for Glenn, but is there anything that prevents us or get us in trouble for talking to Papa John while they file their application? I mean, I understand we're want to work with them and let them know all the problems that they're facing, but is there any legal implications for us having these meetings with them?
I think that Glenn addressed that to some degree at the last meeting. I won't speak for him, but Glenn, if you want to go back over that.
Sure.
The reason why I say it because of ClearSpace. We're talking about the ex parte meetings with ClearSpace and all the accusations that were made about secret meetings. So I just want to get this out in the clear.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Of course, when a chairperson or any member meets with a potential applicant outside of the public space, you run some risk that you learn something in that meeting that you rely upon when you make a decision later on. It's not disclosed to the entire body. So I've spoken with the chairperson about that. And these meetings, though, are really more logistical and trying to find an efficient way to move the project into the Planning Commission's hands. So I don't see a legal impediment necessarily, so long as you understand the parameters, which I'm convinced that the chairperson does. And then as far as FOIA goes, Freedom of Information Act, of course, if this was a subcommittee that had been set up to meet with Belhaven or whichever applicant, those meetings would have to be obviously in public. But here, the chairperson who is elected to bring another officer with him on these meetings, and that is proper. I know it's not the way that the prior chair always operated, but in these instances, I think that we're certainly in different times. And again, we've spoken about it, and I don't see a legal problem with these meetings just to logistically kind of put the project down a track.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that I looked at this from an efficiency standpoint and had articulated what I saw as at least the initial stages of getting prepared for public workshops on this, and stated at the last meeting that I was going to talk with the city solicitor and talk with Mr. Molina, and then would get back to the Papa John family with a proposed approach to how we can make these workshops work. And that's what Jeff and I have been doing at this point. And I think it's been very beneficial from an efficiency standpoint. We had to come up with an agenda. We certainly just couldn't come to a public meeting of the Planning Commission and say, okay, what are we going to talk about? So it was important to identify topics and understand whether the Papa Johns wanted something to remain on the table for discussion or didn't want it to pursue a certain topic. So it was done primarily and well, not just primarily, it was done for the purpose of efficiency, and we're just being fully transparent about what we did and how we approached it. Again, no decisions were made with respect to any matters. No suggestions were given that anything would be approved or disapproved. So, it was it will become clear when we publish an agenda, hopefully very soon for a public meeting, exactly what was done. Any other questions, Joyce?
Rick, because of the climate here nationally all over, have you considered taping these in case there's a question coming up just for your protection, yours and Jeff's, and et cetera, or is that not permissible?
Well, I can't, I haven't considered that. It certainly, I guess, would be permissible depending upon, how the conversations are done on the telephone or whether you're using virtual meeting technology and things of that nature. I don't, I just think that we've been totally above board in terms of what we were doing and how we were doing it. I'm not particularly concerned about the need to record these conversations, but I'm also not opposed to it.
Yeah, if I could comment on that, I think that's right, Rick. I don't think you need to do that. You've made disclosure that you were going to have this meeting at our last session, and just you and Jeff met with them. My question is a little different, and that is, when do you think you'll have a draft agenda for this public workshop, and will that be shared with us first or not?
I would think that we may have a draft of an agenda by the end of next week. As I said at the outset, I think we're very close. Our first discussion that Jeff and I had with Dom and with Matt and the Papa Johns was productive from that standpoint. So I don't see that there's very much more to do on that other than tie a nice bow around it, as Debbie would say. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I would say probably by the end of next week, something that we can circulate as a draft agenda internally, and hopefully move this to public forum very quickly.
Thank you.
Just one more thing on this. At the last meeting, Belhaven was code compliant with their hotel, and we as a committee thought that the structure lacked a certain sophistication. So I was glad to hear Jeff's comment that they want to build a state-of-the-art, environmentally sustainable building. So I think that it serves them and serves the city of Rehoboth well for us to sit down and kind of work with them to get this thing done. So it's just a comment.
Yeah, and that is clearly a topic on the on what is becoming the agenda, for public discussion. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Barry's comment, is that it was code compliant to the physical building and zoning code. It was not compliant to the CDP, which has the force and effect of law, which Glenn always points out and is in all the writings that he does. And I think that's a crucial point. And I would say this outside of the Belhaven, but just a general statement, is many applicants come in, and regardless of the various consultants and engineers that they employ, there ends up being a fairly serious, sufficient content knowledge gap versus the building code and the CDP and the effects of the structures that people want to put up. And I think what Barry was saying earlier is when some applicants come before us, I feel very bad in that lack of knowledge is detrimental in the context of the CDP. And as you start to get into it and present it, people have already spent a lot of time and money, and yet it may have been in a direction that was totally unacceptable from the city's perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I know you raised that issue at our last meeting as well. And I think that's probably where your question came from, addressed to Glenn at that time about being able to share professional experiences one-on-one with applicants. Unfortunately, that becomes problematic as Glenn expressed. And so we're going to rely on the public sessions and the topics that are going to be on the agenda, and hopefully have an opportunity then, Mike, to share your expertise in that regard. And I agree with you. I think it is an issue that is an impediment to people presenting to us plans meet both the code and the CDP, and those have to be harmonized. So I'm looking forward to our public meetings on this, and to Planning Commission being able to share their expertise and visions with the Papa Johns or any applicant for that matter. Anything else? Anyone from the public have any? Do we still have, I guess Susan is still on?
No comments. I'm just listening.
Okay. Do we still have Tom Evans or Sturgis?
We have Sturgis, and again, I'm listening, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this topic? Questions? I guess there being none. Let me just comment a little bit now. I'm going to move back to the CDP topic with respect to August and allowing participation of the organizations and committees and commissions to make presentations to us. As I think we have discussed in the past, we do have already scheduled a special meeting on August 28th, which we intended to utilize for CDP purposes. That is sort of the target date that we were looking at for these presentations, if anyone desires to make them. And the potential exists also, depending upon how many are interested, to add another special meeting date, which most likely one would be the 21st. But I think we're going to have to wait until after the invitation goes out and we see how many organizations, committees, and commissions are interested in actually making a presentation to us rather than submitting written comments to determine that. But our plan right now is to focus on August 28th as the date for these presentations. And I will keep you updated once we learn how many parties are interested in
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Just to let you know, the Board of Commissioners have their regular meeting on the 21st.
Yes, I realize that, and we would have to have our meeting in the morning.
Okay.
If that happens, and I didn't come to you yet with you know, a request to pencil anything in for that date because it was so preliminary based on our discussions yesterday with Debbie.
Rick, you say the meeting's the 28th?
Yes.
And then the mayor and commission is the 21st, did I hear?
Yes. Their regular meeting.
Yeah.
All right,
So where's the conflict?
what meetings do you have scheduled?
Well, no, the conflict would be if we wanted to schedule a second special meeting in August. One of the dates we were looking at was the 21st, realizing that our meeting would have to be in the morning because of the commissioner meeting starting at 2 in the afternoon. But we'll have to, you know, just sort of work with the flow of things and see if we need that second special meeting. Any other questions, comments on that particular topic?
So sorry, Rick, just to be clear. So we have the 14th, which is our regular meeting that's scheduled, August 14th, right?
Right. And as far as we know, that will primarily be, assuming the applicant, you know, responds and comes back, that will be the public hearing on the Clear Space and Rehoboth Spotlight site plan applications.
Okay.
Starting at 1 p.m. I believe.
Starting at 1 p.m.
Okay. And then we should hold, it sounds like, the morning of the 21st and the 28th in the afternoon for now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Are there, looking at future meeting dates beyond those, are there any other topics that anyone has for consideration at any of our upcoming regular meetings? I guess one thing we ought to back up to is the tree ordinance that has recently been presented to the Board of Oversight. And I've had some conversations, and I guess I want to throw this out to the members of the Planning Commission we have the option of either putting it on an agenda and talking about it as a group, or they are willing to receive individual comments from the individual commissioners. How does anyone feel about the best approach from the Planning Commission standpoint? And while you're doing that, I've got to run and get my charger because my battery's about to run out.
May I just share something, since I'm on the Park, Shade, and Tree Committee? So I'm not on the committee that's put this ordinance up, but I am on the exception committee for Park, Shade, and Tree. And what we have decided as a group to do is to provide comments back to the chair of the Park, Shade, and Tree Committee versus having, you know, a meeting or a discussion on it. And I'm fine with that. So I'll just share with you what we're doing on the Park, Shade, and Tree Committee. So I will provide those comments back to that from my perspective.
Okay. Any?
I'm willing to just give them some comments. I don't know that we need to have a meeting to discuss it unless others feel that we should. I mean, I thought generally it was a pretty good draft of the legislation, and I would suggest that we just give them comments and send a copy of that to Ann to distribute to any other members, you know, just so they see what we're doing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Rick, I'm going to have to put you on mute for a few minutes. I've got a major contractor here and I've got to talk to him. So I apologize.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Yeah, I do think that probably individual submission of comments makes the most sense in this case. We have an awful lot on our plate at this point. This is only a you know, recommendation from the Law and Oversight Committee. It's not a formal proposed amendment yet. And so I think individual comments, you know, are perfectly acceptable. Okay. Are there any potential conflicts with our future regularly scheduled meetings? No. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
You will let us know, though, as soon as you know, Rick, about whether we're going to have extra meetings, right? So we
yes,
can.
yes,
yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely.
That makes a big difference. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there are no other items to discuss, Ann, have you received any applications?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, with that, I'll entertain our favorite motion.
No,
Oh,
Rick, just
yes.
one question. It's on something we haven't heard about for a while, but it's directed to Glenn. Beach Walk has been like nothing for many months. Is there anything happening on that?
Oh, someone might mute, maybe.
Yeah, I think Glenn is muted or something.
I'm on now. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it has been a while. As you recall, the Board of Commissioners passed an ordinance that arguably clarified that the two ordinances that were later adopted by the commission, by the commissioners actually applied to beach walk. So the judge had put together a briefing schedule, and my recollection is that Richard Forston, who is representing the applicant in that case, filed his brief maybe a week and a half ago, because Ann and I just had a discussion a couple of days ago about needing to put that brief on the website. So there should be a new brief on the website by the applicant arguing that ordinance should not apply to the beach walk project. Our brief then will be due, when I say our brief, remember Max Walton is representing the Board of Commissioners who are still in the case. So Max Walton's brief will be due in about 30 days, if I remember the briefing schedule correctly. So the latest news is that there's something new on the website, on the city's website, which is a brief from the applicant on this new round of litigation that we're into.
It's located in the document center.
Okay.
From a logistical standpoint of planning for the planning commission, all along it's been discussed that if and when whatever is ultimately decided, it still will be coming back to the planning commission. So as a practical matter, it looks like it'll still be a long time before we ever see anything.
I expect that to be the case. It's been a long time, and it seems like it's going to be a long time, which, you know, without showing any cards, it just amazes me that there isn't a better way to, you know, move that property forward from a development perspective. But that's where we are.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it up, Mike. It's always good to keep up to date on those things. Anyone else have any questions? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.